Good morning, gentlemen, and the solitary lady who has brightened up the proceedings. We are privileged to have you as the first panel to speak at a very special edition of the India International Hospitality Expo 2020, IHE 2020. This is the first time that IHE is going virtual, and though it's going virtual, we are going ahead with a full-fledged uh, conference. And your session is going to be the first session of the conference. We're going to have 9 discussions and 3 special addresses at the conference. And this is the very first session of the conference. So it's special for us in many ways. It's also special because of the people who are in front of me. I think we have some of the the brightest and the best people in the hospitality industry who will be sharing their views on a subject which is on top of everyone's mind. Um, I request Mr. Rakesh Kumar, who's the chairman of the India Expo Mart Limited. India Expo Mart Limited is a body which presents IHE. If you remember IHE 2019, where many of you were also very active. It was held at Greater Noida in a vast space, vast physical space. Unfortunately, we do not have the advantage of having a physical IHE 2020, but I'm sure the virtual IHE 2020 will be as big, if not better. Mr. Kumar, can you please start the proceedings with your thoughts?
Namaskar. Good morning, everybody. Dear friends of IHE 2020, esteemed panelists, partner organizations, and our supporters in the hospitality sector around the world. Friends, I find it hard to describe how delighted I am to be back in the midst of you, the hospitality sector's thought leaders, to inaugurate the IHE 2020 conference, whose packed program features 9 panel discussions and 3 keynote addresses by people who are considered to be at the forefront of the cutting edge thinking in the industry. In addition to these talks, we will also present cooking masterclasses, mixology, training, and B2B interactions between the sector's decision makers and vendors of the products and services, making IHE 2020 a balanced mix of vendor showcases and the kind of intellectual engagement that attracts both young hoteliers in the making and their seniors and super seniors. It is the mix that makes IHE 2020 a festival of ideas as much as trade show. Friends, now in its 3rd year, the India International Hospitality Expo, popularly known as IHE, a project of the India Expo Center in Mart, India Exposition Mart Limited, Greater Noida, could rightfully describe itself last year as the biggest B2B trade show in the hospitality space in the country. This year, our hands have been tied by the pandemic, so we have had to go 100% virtual, but we still have signed up more than 100 exhibitors by now from the food sector as well as the kitchen and laundry equipment and furniture and the furnishing verticals. We also have an international country partner, Peru, and exhibitors from Belgium and Germany to ensure our show is not denied in global flares. We have shown with our example that there is no reason for the industry to lose faith in the resilience. It may seem as if we are trapped in a long dark tunnel, which normally Swarish tells in most of his webinars. But there is no reason yet for us to keep looking out for light in the end of it. There's a silver lining that exists there. The subject of our discussion could not have been more appropriate? It reads, when the going gets tough, the innovators gets going, navigating the hospitality marketplace in the shadow of the COVID-19. As we drew to the end of the series of 26 June webinars that the IML and IHE 2020 had organized some month back, we had ended on a somewhat positive note. We had assumed COVID-19 would be consigned to history books by now. Unfortunately, I can say, but the virus has come back in a second wave of which looks much more deadlier than the first one. Definitely, it's a very serious at the moment. And we seem to have also become victims of a COVID-19 overkill. We seem to have accepted COVID-19 as our fate, which causes us to ignore the basic safety norms, leading to terrible consequences. There's a good news, and all of us know very well, though in the two places and the two companies, two candidates have already brought the vaccines, which offer serious causes for the rising hope that the pandemic will finally be contained. Despite the distribution challenges, which at the moment the government is talking to many people. Even yesterday in one of my Rotary meeting, we had discussion with the very senior officer of the Health Ministry. The distributions are being planned in a big way. More vaccines are likely to follow. But when will India get one that will be both accessible and affordable? That is also a moot question. Even as grappled with this question, the answer does not seem to come easy. In the light of the persistence of the COVID-19, the panelists will, I will request them to please discuss and address some of the important issues. One of the questions is, what are the big management lessons that we have learned from the pandemic? Though we have discussed this question in earlier webinars also. Two, do we have a plan to cope up with an extended period of almost zero international corporate and leisure travel and a seriously stressed MICE and the wedding calendar? That is another issue. Third is, how prepared are we for a second back-to-back year of economic underperformance? Are increased domestic leisure travel and home food deliveries good enough to help us bail out of situation where we are in today? Fourth is, have we run out of newer and the more original ideas, or there are other creative solutions we need to look into and consider replicating in the hotels we run? Also, it's important to discuss how can the industry project its problems more effectively to the government and get it to be more proactive than it has opted to be. Are there some lessons to be learned from the recent steps taken by the governments of Delhi and Maharashtra and even in down south to promote ease of business in the hospitality sector? To address these vexatious questions, we have a panel of reputed experts who are really the leaders of the hospitality sector. We can always be trusted to have a scintillating conversation and leave behind gems of wisdom on the table. They are with us, the luminary of our industry, most respected Mr. K.V. Kachru, Chairman Emeritus and Principal Advisor, South Asia Radisson Hotel Group. We have with us Mr. Rajiv Kaul, an eminent personality and the advisor, the Leela Palaces Hotel and Resorts. Mr. Dilip Puri, the person known more than a hotelier, also an educationist for our IHE sector. founder and CEO, Indian Schools of Hospitality, Ms. Swanika Malhotra Kandari, Joint Managing Director, MBD Group, and the only women panelist here, and Mr. Anil Chedda, CEO, Chief Operating Officer, ITC Hotels, a very renowned person and full of knowledge. On behalf of India Exposition Mart and our showpiece event, India International Hospitality Expo, IHE 2020, I once again extend a warm welcome to you all, the moderator of this Industry Leaders Forum, very well-known face in the hospitality sector, Mr. Swarish Bhattacharya. He is with us today, and he will now take charge and get the experts talking with you. Swarish, over to you. Please take it forward, make it interesting, and I think this is the very first program of today, IHE 2020. Best of luck, and thanks for all the panelists for joining with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh Kumar ji. I don't have to work very hard at making this session interesting because the people here will steer it. We have a really eminent panel, and you have already set the touch points of this discussion. I think we have a good hour and a half of scintillating conversation ahead. I can almost feel it in my pulse. Without much ado, I think I'll start with Mr. K.B. Kachru. Mr. Kachru, you have, of course, seen this industry through many ups and downs, and the COVID pandemic is in the first serious crisis to confront this industry. Now, given your history and your your experience in this matter, do you think this pandemic is a challenge which is too hot to handle, or is it also something which will pass and and won't be here to stay?
I think first of all, I must compliment Rakesh ji and the entire team for putting this huge thing together. And I was very happy to hear that there are over 100 exhibitors today. And we have international presence here. I mean, getting Germany and Belgium itself is a huge task. Congratulations. I was first last year also. So I saw the magnitude of the event. It was really very interesting, and I think you are doing a lot for the industry. I'm very lucky to have great co-panelists here, and which is young people, aging youth, and people like me who have been hanging around for a while. So it's wonderful to be here. I mean, as far as this pandemic is concerned, you can't, Suresh, really blame anyone. We all were taken by some kind of a surprise when all this started. Nobody expected the kind of magnitude it has gone to. I mean, lakhs of crores have been lost. We all accept this. Markets have shrunk. And in India alone, I was just reading a couple of days back, we are facing over 90,000 crores in terms of losses just in our industry. And although some of our fellow experts are saying that things will come back by 21, I personally feel that we shouldn't expect significant turn before end of 22 or early 23. This is, kind of a helicopter view, but we have to actually work with unknown factors. Whether we accept it or not, we have to work with unknown factors. Market dynamics are changing every week and every location. You have seen what has happened to Delhi. They last month announced that they'll move to 250 people, 200 and 250 people and outdoors. And yesterday they have again clamped down because of phase 3, third outbreak, big one, and they have limited to 50. So I feel that when we get into real time discussions, we have to look at two major things. How we reinvent ourselves, how we retool ourselves, and at the same time, what is government doing to us? Unfortunately, I feel government has not really provided much. Not many people are saying this, but the fact remains that this particular industry unfortunately, has not been acknowledged and given the position it should be. An industry which actually gives you a GDP of 9%, and we have 12% of total employment is with our industry. We haven't got that kind of positioning. So I think I would be very happy to see what our young blood and aging youth says. And I would like to butt in and, discuss and give my own views. But I would like that we certainly discuss both what do we deserve and what actually we are getting, and how do we need to change ourselves in the new environment.
Right. In fact, we will come back to the issue of the government. I think that remains really a vexatious problem, and there's so many issues, and I'm sure, someone like Sonika will be able to particularly talk about the financial implications because she herself is quite a fund of knowledge on finances. But before we go to those areas of more specialized discussion, I'd like to ask Mr. Kaul, it is quite clear, as Mr. Kachur says, that this pandemic is going to be around. And even if the vaccine comes, most probably it will meet with all the FDA approvals and all by April. But even then, to reach the masses, it will take till at least the end of 2021 to actually be available off the shelves in the market. Now, so that almost rules out 2021 for the industry, and we really don't know which direction the disease is traveling, because no one seems to have a model which seems to be predicting the course of the disease. Like we saw in Delhi itself, how suddenly from boundless enthusiasm, it has come back to pessimism. We are already talking about the phase 3 of COVID striking the city. Now, in this uncertainty, Mr. Kaul, how do you expect the hotel manager to, to navigate these choppy waters, really? Mr. Kaul, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you. To begin with, I'd like to echo KB's congratulations for having this particular virtual expo, because it's clearly the kind of stuff that is needed to give a shot in the arm to the industry's morale. Coming back to your specific question, I think what we really need to do is, when this epidemic started, as an industry, we were hemorrhaging very, very heavily. And our immediate task was to somehow stem the losses. So it was all about conservation of capital. Today, I think most organizations have been able to at least halve their losses in the last 6 to 7 months, by and large. I think the immediate goal before us is to reach break even. So while the vaccine will have its own trajectory, we will have ups and downs. There will be, stage 3 herd immunity. All of these will be kicking in at different places in different forms. But as a hotelier or as a hotel manager, they need to keep their eyes on achieving break even. The good news is that there are opportunities. There are opportunities maybe 2 days a week, and maybe 3 weeks or 2 weeks in the month. But these micro opportunities continue to enlarge themselves, and we need to take full advantage of it to reach break-even point. I think that is the single most important thing that general managers need to focus on. Second thing is that we need to ensure that jobs are not lost. Livelihood protection is a key thing. There's been severe trauma that has happened in the hospitality industry in the last 7 months. I don't think much has been discussed as much as it deserves to be about it. And I think we need to seriously work towards containing that, because I think now we have reached a stage where the books are beginning to look a little less brutal than they were when we started out. But we need to make sure that, when it comes to our workforce, we are a people industry. And I think a lot of, it's not been easy. There have been very, very, very difficult decisions for a whole lot of companies. But we need to, I've been saying this, we need to use a scalpel rather than an axe, when we're trying to control our costs.
And in fact, that's been one of the big unsaid stories of this whole pandemic and its impact on the industry. The attrition, not attrition, the loss of jobs,
Yeah.
And it's been quite an axe-like treatment that some employees unfortunately have experienced. Mr. Puri, of course, you have been a hotel developer. You've you almost established Starwood hotels in the subcontinent. But now you wear the educator's hat. So I'll come to the question which leads off from what Mr. Kaul just said. He said that there is. He talked about job losses in the industry. Do you think this is also the time for people in the industry to look at reskilling themselves? What is what kind of people will survive in this bloodshed, and what is the way forward for them?
Right. So I'm just referring to some of the things both KB and Rajiv said earlier. KB spoke about the financial losses, 90,000 crores, when it's going to end, what the government is doing, and clearly, Rajiv touched upon job losses, trauma. To me, I think it's not just a trauma; it's a humanitarian crisis. And I'm sorry, but the industry doesn't want to accept that. You talk to any of the hotel leaders today, they want to hide the fact about how many job losses are happening. Why? I think they need to confront it, they need to accept it, and they need to have a strategy that what are you going to do about it? Everybody wants to protect their business, everybody wants their books to improve, everybody wants to reach break-even point, but you ask most hoteliers, they will try and talk around the fact of how many job losses are happening. I hear general managers and leaders say, oh yeah, those who went off to their hometowns and couldn't come back, obviously they lost their jobs. As if they didn't want to come back. They couldn't come back. To put those, I think we are not giving adequate importance to this. And I tell you, it's not for today, it's for the future. As an educator, I can tell you, parents question us today saying, should our kids even study hospitality? What is the future of this industry? I mean, if that is the crisis today, then when things do come back to normal, I'm sorry, but the industry will have nobody who wants to work for it. When it comes to reskilling, let me just say that I think this is the real opportunity, because the training in hospitality, anybody who's worked in the hospitality industry, we're the only industry which provides what you call transferable skills, which are these soft skills which are usable and needed in a multitude of sectors. You think about all the sectors which have been spawned by hospitality, the boom in food and beverage, whether it's the e-commerce businesses, whether it's Make My Trip or food delivery platforms, or whether it's luxury retail, whether it's luxury real estate. These are all sectors who are starved for hospitality trained people. I can tell you, at our institute, we just launched a postgraduate program which is designed exactly for hospitality youth who've lost their jobs and say, we don't want to go back to the hotel industry. Reskill us and upskill us for other sectors. When they start losing confidence in our industry, we will not be able to get good talent back. Keep another perspective in mind. The reality is that all of us agree that the new lean structure of hotels, I know of hotels where a 500-room hotel, which worked on a 1.2 staff to room ratio, meant 750 employees. In the supposed new normal, they're saying even when things come back to full recovery, we will only work with 400 staff. They've just, made the organizations leaner through enabling technology, contactless, we can reduce people. The challenge is going to be, you might only need 400 people, but you need much smarter people than you have today. People equipped with these new skills, people who've been upskilled for what this new normal will require. How do you get people trained to virtually communicate? All our training so far has been on body language and how you speak and how you walk, how you dress, how you talk. That's all gone out of the window. So I think that the industry is at this real inflection point where if they don't take this humanitarian crisis seriously, the industry is the one who's going to suffer when the recovery happens, because no smart young person will want to work in this industry. And I think that's a real challenge.
Right. And I think, Mr. Puri, you really have put the point as eloquently and as emphatically as you could, because I think this is one the aspect of the pandemic we have to talk about at greater length. And I'm not seeing the industry bodies really doing it. No one is touching upon this. And especially the implications of this on future infusions of human capital into the sector are quite serious. I mean, as you said, there will be, there will be a market decline in the quality of people who will come in, because people really won't see it as a, like it had almost acquired the status of glamorous profession. And really good people were coming into this profession, but it may not happen if this is how the situation pans out. Now, Sonika, the question I always burden you with financial questions, but the issue for the industry is that what kind of we've heard different numbers, but how does it translate to an individual hotel? Do you think an individual hotel can take the current I mean, there's a sort of a paralysis in the travel industry. The MICE and the weddings industries are suffering also. So all are, the F&B sector hasn't really picked up because of issues which I mentioned at the beginning. So how does a hotel cope with the financial implications of all these drawbacks? And this doesn't seem to be a short-term drawback. This seems to be at least a year ahead. We should plan for a year ahead at least, when we are looking at this doomsday scenarios.
All right. So thank you, Saresh, for the question. This stress on the hospitality was actually kind of being felt in terms of tremors even prior to COVID. So before the COVID started, most, I would say at least more than 50% of the hospitality players, owners, were feeling a stress on their balance sheet. So they were, either heavily debt laden, or they were not having enough accruals to, kind of take care of their expansion plans. And there were various reasons because of which the demand was not enough to really populate a better balance sheet for most of the players. And COVID has worsened the scenario. Now, if we see that, we've been patient enough to probably go through this crisis for, more than 3 quarters, literally, and if it's going to continue for a year, believe you me, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but the mortality rate in hotels is going to really, really see a skyrocketing, number. And if you couple this entire scenario of demand really going south post-COVID, and the fact that, we have the government support, which is actually coming in a parameter which most hotels are not fitting into. So when I say not fitting into, so if you look at particularly the MSME benefit that the hospitality sector, thankfully got. But the question is, does any of the hotel, the bigger players or even the mid-sized players fit into the 5 crores to the 25 crore outlay? My answer is no. There are very, very few players who are probably at a very small segment. And in any case, that segment generally doesn't take debt. So they've been able to survive through this crisis through their own internal accruals and whatever savings that they've been able to manage. So that means we're sitting on a 90% of a percentile, which is actually not being able to take benefit of this government intervention of interest-free loan of, if your capital outlay is between 5 to 25%. So which means with demand going south and balance sheets being already stressed prior to COVID, what we inherited, and very, very low government support, we are going into a very high mortality rate in the hotels. So pardon me for being pessimistic, but this is what the current status is looking at this point of time. And of course, this gives us, I'm sorry, please carry on with your question. Yeah.
No, and have you come across hotels which are shutting down or which are, which have been deflagged because, because owners find it difficult to manage it? Do you see
there are a lot of
owners experiencing the stress?
Well, there are a lot of owners, hotels, which are on the block. Or have been taken up by ARCs, which is asset reconstruction companies, because it was already getting into a deep stress on their balance sheet, as I said, prior to COVID. And so some of them have seen the light of day of being taken up by ARCs. And we see this as a lot of opportunistic time by international private equity funds, hospitality funds, to actually take over some very, very profound organizations. So when we say make in India, now we want to actually proliferate more Indian ownership in the country of, if other industries and so for hotels. But this has become like a sweet spot right now for all these cash-rich, private equity funds who are probably picking up monies at less than 1%, and they're deploying it and picking up distressed assets here in India. And there are, believe you me, a lot of assets on the block, and these are mostly assets in cities which are predominantly, working on business clientele, corporate clientele, and they're under distress. So there are a lot of them. You talk about any gateway city or even category B cities, you see a lot of hotels on the block, and a lot of private equity funds are actually eyeing them aggressively. It's a great time for their acquisition. So which means the ownership at Indian levels is going to go down dramatically. So that's how I see it. Yes.
Yeah. So Anil, you've heard everyone, and it's a gloomy picture. We all know it's not the brightest of the times, or the sunniest of the times that we're living in. Last year when we did IHG 2019, we were all very gung ho and we're looking forward, despite the stresses on the balance sheets, we were looking forward to great times ahead. Now, now that we're landed with the situation, which the common consensus is that we should look at at least 18 months from now to the time when this actually blows away. How do companies such as ITC, hope to deal with the situation? especially because you've got hotels in different, categories and different segments of the market.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. First of all, thank you for this invite to join this distinguished panel. And Kumar Saab, many congratulations. I did attend the expo last year. An absolutely phenomenal show. Was quite amazed to see the kind of setup which was there. It reminded me of certain other shows that one has attended abroad. So many congratulations and all the very best for this one. So coming back to your question, obviously I've heard everybody, and I think thoughts are very valid. I think we moved from a phase of conquering to coexisting. We've definitely now realized, if you remember when it all started in April and May, and there were estimations coming for a single quarter, then 2 quarters, then all the numbers kept dropping, every industry estimate, but now everybody's now started talking about 1 year or 2 years to occupancy to come back, 2 years for ARR to come back. And to my mind, that is a reality, and the reality is certainly hit us now. So this new normal definition that we've been speaking about in April, May, and June has come to reality. Anybody who's open now is come back to a brand new playground, whether it's an associate or whether it's a guest. And for both, it's a new world of hospitality completely, and that's what I think all the chains were doing over 2 to 3 months, because hygiene, health, and safety are the new buzzwords. It's today sanitization definitely before personalization. Today you definitely have service which is you can stay away. You don't need to come very near. You can only feel it. You can feel the warmth of it. But yes, we are going through very tough times. Something that we never thought would happen to us. Something we pray would never happen to us again. But you are preparing yourself for the battle, and
what are these things?
So
this that
your
can
first
be
question
done.
was learning, and I think the biggest learning which has really come about is work with less. Make your entire model more efficient in every respect. Cost lines, we have learned so much on the cost lines, irrespective of wherever you're spending every penny. You can even go down to paying for a set-top box somewhere, but you for a newspaper, for a magazine. So you're looking at each and every cost element, because to my mind, the survival phase is still on. This is not the revival phase right now. You will have to survive for at least next year and a half. And all the stress that everybody has been talking about is an absolute reality. I think we'll have to break it down, not as a company. We'll have to break hotel by hotel, location by location. So certain locations of ours have certainly started bouncing back, and that's exactly what everybody else is doing, is the leisure locations. At this point in time, Suresh, you really have to think out of the box. How do you drive a customer back to your hotel to stay? How do you drive a customer back to your restaurants to dine in? Because if you look at about 2 months back, one word was nervousness. And what the hotels and the restaurants did was it gave, to my mind, a lot of confidence to the consumer. And I think that is coming back to reality. People have started stepping out, although the numbers are very small. This will not reach the break even, as Mr. Kaul mentioned. Yes, I think the first step for any hotel today is to be cash positive. And towards that, you have to drive in the money on the top lines. Occupancies have slightly coming back. Locations like Jaipur, Agra, Manesar, who are doing well for us. You got to step it up. Stress.
And I think this is because of domestic tourism.
Completely domestic. But cities like Bangalore, high inventory. Cities like Hyderabad, cities like Calcutta, cities like Chennai, where we have a very large inventory. These are going to be stress points. You'll have to really think out of the box as to what you can do. But over the last 30 or 45 days, what one is witnessing is the revival of the food and beverage, and that's a good sign. Okay, leave aside the news of last night of Delhi, where again you can't have weddings more than 50, etc. But I'm seeing great traction back in the restaurants. Some of the very popular restaurants in the country, like Bukhara or Dampuk or Royal Afghan in Bangalore, or Kebabs and Curries, some of them are even back to almost 70-80%. In fact, I have 2 restaurants who are back to almost 100% capacity of what they were doing pre-COVID. So that's a good story. That's a good story. The average check on food and beverage has not fallen as much as the average room rate. So hotels, large format hotels who were on a ratio of 1:1, can continue to drive that business. Hopefully, banqueting, which was absolutely zero in the first 90 to 120 days, see some spikes there. There is some good wedding season coming until March end. There are some good heavy wedding dates, and one is seeing some good occupancies all across, not only
Right.
for us but across all locations, all hotels. So that's definitely a good sign. So you have to you have no choice. This is like a reboot button. You have to go back. You have to think what you can do. Think out of the box. Think of some creative way to get people back. Think of alternate sources of revenues. You touched briefly in your note yesterday on the takeaway. If you looked at 1 year back, hardly any luxury hotel was into takeaway segment, but today every company is dumped into it. So I said this before that one also saw this opportunity sometime back in April itself and said takeaway, to my mind, is going to be the new highway. So go all take.
Anil, what has been the experience? Because ITC hotels launched a very ambitious takeaway program, home delivery and takeaway program.
It's been brilliant, Suresh. It's been brilliant. In fact,
has it emerged as a revenue stream? Yeah. Has it emerged as a revenue stream by itself?
It has emerged as a profitable stream, not just a revenue stream. So I mean, if you have people who are already on your on your rolls, who've not been asked to go away, you already have large kitchens who are serving whatever little occupancy that you have. This is the only way out. And to my mind, this is still very low. I think the sky is the limit on this business. We can go much higher, even for restaurants. I keep sharing this example with my team in Delhi that the sale of Bukhara one night could be equivalent to 100 room nights that you would do in hotels. So don't worry. If you're not able to get that business, make sure all the safety norms are followed. So all our restaurants, first of all, we leave an alternate table empty. So we are only working with 50% capacity. First thing is safety, then the revenue follows, and then the profitability follows. But there is an opportunity there which you need to scale out. There are some very good offers that I keep getting on WhatsApp from very various competition hotels, standalone restaurants. People are really thinking aloud, and that's probably the only way to survive. What do you do at this point in time? So takeaway, yes, it's a great opportunity. And I thought when the restaurants start opening, these numbers could go down, but that's not happened. So touch wood,
So that's the good news.
In fact, I think there are various segments of takeaway. A takeaway just can't be seen as just a normal takeaway. A takeaway also has to be seen like a hotel, where you have a variety of restaurants. You got a coffee shop, you got a specialty, you got a branded Indian, you got a bakery. So you got to also break that down. It just can't be one simple takeaway. I put my menu on the takeaway, and you got to have responsible food, which lasts while 45 minutes of delivery or 1 hour of delivery and things like that. And remember, takeaway is also a very competitive segment. People will not used to pay these kind of prices. In fact, my own partners were quite surprised when the numbers started moving up, because the segment, the price points were very different of theirs, while up the game or anybody else for that matter.
That's
good beginning. Let's see how it goes.
Interesting. So Mr. Puri, I'll come to you. You've heard people. You've seen the flow of the discussions. Now there are 2 or 3 issues that based on experience, maybe we could talk about at length. One is, of course, you have the experience of setting up hotels in what were previously regarded as non-travel destinations, non-hotel destinations. You almost put like a lot of the small towns on the hoteliering map of India. Now if you think back, are these towns going to suffer more than the rest in the new pandemic scenario? What is? I mean, of course, I've heard that resort hotels are not suffering that much because they seem to be benefiting from the domestic tourism, the sudden growth in domestic tourism, and they're also benefiting from the wedding business. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I think clearly the smaller, the tier 2, tier 3 towns actually are going to benefit, because the only tourism left in India is domestic tourism. It's the big cities. I think Anil rightly said, I mean, the Bangalore's and the Hyderabad's and the Chennai's, which depended upon global travel. Thousands of nights came from all these big consulting companies and the IBMs of the world. That business is for the near and medium term almost gone. And that business will also shrink in the longer term. I mean, I think there was a post by Bill Gates yesterday which said that he expects business travel to be cut by 50% even after recovery.
Right.
With technology and how we're running a show like this, people's needs to travel will reduce. So the smaller towns, which are less dependent upon any international business, are the ones who probably have the most to gain in the recovery phase. I think the big city hotels, which depended on these global RFP accounts for their business, they have to do some serious out of the box thinking, again, to use Anil's term, as to what are they going to do with their business. So my view is the smaller towns, resorts clearly. I
Right.
think leisure is a market which, regardless of COVID or not, India was going to see unprecedented growth in domestic leisure. But
Right.
in terms of tier 2, tier 3 hotels, where you find the mid-scale hotel segment operating, I think those guys are probably best equipped to manage the future than the guys who have the big boxes in the big metros. I think that's going to be the real challenge.
Right. Right. So you feel that now in this scenario, what kind of innovations do you think the big city hotels have to introduce, I mean, are they sort of horribly stuck in a blind, in a bind?
Well, actually, interestingly, an ex-colleague of mine is right now pursuing a course in design thinking from the Wharton School. And he was
Right.
sharing with me some of the stuff he's doing. And one of it is about rethinking, reimagining how hotels are designed, either repurposing them today or building them anew for tomorrow. And I think I've always been a proponent of this. And, while ITC may be an exception with its great quality of Indian food, but otherwise, I think when you look at food and beverage, when you look at all other allied services, great spas, even laundry as business, this takeaway delivery business, as pure play hoteliers, I don't know if we have any business being in these businesses. I think with the standalone F&B sector having developed and having become much more mature in the last few years, what is a hotel doing trying to operate 4 or 5 restaurants, even the required kitchen spaces behind it, whether it's pastry, bakery, all those kind of things. I think the whole way in which the design and the flow of a hotel should be has to undergo significant change. And this may be the right time for hoteliers, architects, designers, developers to be really thinking that in the future, we should be very clear. If we're in the business of selling rooms, then let's be as good as we can in doing that. And if we're in the business of selling food and beverage, let's be very good doing that. To try to do too many things which are becoming more and more specialized, I think is where hoteliers are going to have a challenge in the future. So I think there's a real need to relook at how spaces are allocated, how workflows happen, how core activities of the hotel and what you're good at is what you should be doing, and what you don't have core expertise in, build the spaces. I mean, build curbside areas in your hotels to lease out to great restaurants.
Right.
If you are building a laundry to provide in-house services, allow retail areas to have that available to non-residents as well. So I think that's where the industry has to move, and perhaps the post-COVID time provides the right opportunity for them to start thinking that.
And also, the hotels which are coming up, of course, I don't know how much of hotel construction is taking place now, but I mean, I'm sure projects won't be just halted overnight. Now they could make use of such suggestions and tweak their design accordingly. Make it leaner and less fanciful. And now if you even if you go to a small town hotel, there are about 4 restaurants per hotel. Sort of meaningless sometimes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Mr. Kachu will have a view on that, so we'll.
So Mr. Kachu, I want to, because this is a point which takes up, because you also have really penetrated. I mean, you sort of led the way in penetrating small towns. and when we're talking about the layers of differences, I mean, it's not that the pandemic hits everyone the same way, or the response to the pandemic has to be the same at all levels. What are the layers of responses do you see the hotel industry, sort of coming up with, especially in small towns and emerging leaders?
I think I really would like a balance between what Anil said and how Dilip summed it up, very nicely. We were rather the first international company to venture into tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And we also believed in that the restaurants, if it is coming up as an independent industry, we shouldn't over-focus ourselves. But, that was the policy, and we were initially primarily a franchising company, so we had to accept some of the preferences of the owners. That was the situation at that stage. But we have to realize today a combination of what can be done in the next 1 or 2 years and what would happen to the industry post 23 or 24. I think immediately, as we have seen and what our other co-panelists indicated, all the gateway cities, Sonika was very clear in her view as to what is happening financially to our industry. I mean, look at places like Bangalore. We have lost 88% of the RevPAR last year when you compare it to pre-COVID. So we have Mumbai 71%. Almost every city has lost it that way. But when you look at the new developments, I mean, I'm sure some of you will be surprised. In the last quarter, I was just reading JLL's report. The development signed in tier 3 and tier 2 cities were much higher than what is happening anywhere else. They are controlling over 70% of the new development signed in the last quarter. So I think the trend is changing. You have to accept what is needed, what domestic tourism can do to you. It will help you survive. And in any case, my friend indicated what Bill Gates said yesterday, that 50% of the business is gone. But he also made a remark which is very interesting. Personal meetings are no gold standard now. It's not essential to meet personally one-to-one. I mean, he made, while he was making the other comment, he made this comment. You have to realize MICE would be most impacted in the next few years. And realizing that, I would go in with what my other colleague said. We have to rethink in terms of designing and building. If that is not addressed at this stage, I don't think we have a serious positive way forward. And in addition to that, reskilling our people. If you don't reskill your people, I think we don't need in a 5-star hotel 10 people to open doors. I think those days are gone. So we have to reinvent. We have to reinvent our product offerings. We have to retrain. We have to retool. I think this is now what is needed. We have to reinvent ourselves, and we have to accept the new normal. If we don't, then we will be left behind.
Right. So, Mr. Kaul, that brings me to the luxury hotels, and Leela Palaces, hotels and resorts have always been synonymous with luxury. Do you think the luxury business will take a major hit because of the pandemic? Do you see it coming back even within this time frame, or will it take a little longer to come back on its feet?
See, any business that is dependent on international travel will take longer to recover. So luxury, unfortunately, is more dependent. You know, depending on the destination that I'm talking about. It varies from destination to destination, but luxury will definitely take longer to recover, but it shall recover, you know. And I think I would just like to supplement a very important point that Sonika made earlier, that the stress on the balance sheet that was there. You know, it is amazing that the replacement value of a hotel asset, the difference between the replacement value of a hotel asset and its valuation done by discounted cash flow, normally the gap would be about 10 to 15%. Even pre-COVID, the gap was anything between 25 to 40%, depending on the location. And that is to do with the real estate costs of development. So going back to what some of the other panelists said, that we have to reimagine the hotel, because if real estate is going to be so expensive, you know, you have to think through what is your return per square foot, what is your profit per square foot. And several of the facilities, I don't necessarily agree with the panelists about food and beverage. I think food and beverage in India will continue to do well in hotels for many, many years, you know, for the next decade or so. But that's my individual point. But I think that many other facilities that are on site, they can be easily moved off site, you know. And now with this working from home, whole lot of remote working will come into play. So clearly the traditional architectural program that the hotels followed will be re-looked at. That is there.
I think that's a big takeaway.
And there's one other thing that I wanted to, you know, the alternative revenue streams that Anil spoke about, and it's heartening. Some of them will work, but they truly have to be scalable. That is my point, you know, because right now we have time on our hands, we have staff sitting idle. So it's do anything where there's a marginal utility, positive marginal utility. But you have to go beyond that thinking. And ultimately it has to be scalable. Otherwise, I don't see the traditional luxury hotel model being changed too much.
Okay.
I don't see it being changed too much. I think, however, there will be a more painful waiting period for the luxury industry.
Right. Anil, MICE is one issue that I think which will keep coming up, because MICE seems to have been, irretrievably hit. Given the fact that, a lot of hotel companies in India were investing heavily in MICE, what do you think is a way to save the market for Indian hotels? Are there hybrid models which are coming into play, or I mean, of course, we know that even IHG 2020 has gone virtual, you know, but I hope it won't be for the long term. But even if you take the next 1 year into perspective, we may not have any MICE events. Now, doesn't it pose a challenge to the hotel industry to completely reinvent the way we're looking at MICE?
You can reinvent completely, but your MICE is on a long holiday. That's for sure. There is no two ways about it. Whatever the hotels are doing today is MICE W, which is the wedding segment. That's the only thing that is going to happen. The celebrations have also become smaller. Where is the meeting taking place? So you said it bang on. Everything is going to go virtual. So I think you'll have to we've done a couple of events virtually where you deliver pack boxes, multi-city orders, and things like that. And although very small at this point in time, but that's the only way forward. But the large format events are totally over. I don't see them coming back in a hurry. The books are almost zero on that front. What will you change on the MICE? You've given the confidence to the customer that all this I will do. When you come into the hotel, it's touchless screening, touchless check-in, get into the banquet, there are masks, there are screens, somebody will serve you, you don't need to pick up a ladle. All those things have been done, and everybody's trying to do that. And you got to be very careful, careful doing that. But where are the takers? The industry is definitely, at a halt at this point in time. And large hotels in Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi, who are very highly dependent on MICE, will have to really think through. But life also gives you opportunities. So I mean, I worked in a hotel in Chennai where, if you all remember, we went through that liquor ban on the highway.
Right.
And for almost 6 to 7 months, we were not allowed to serve a drop of alcohol in almost 70-80% of the
Right.
hotels in Chennai. The
Right.
guys who were, they had a blast, but then the other 70-80% reinvented themselves in some other manner.
Right.
Shift focus, you'll have to watch out for segments which will work. You'll have to watch out for traffic which can work. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really tough. But although Mr. Kaul doesn't agree, but I still believe that I'm going full guns blazing on the opportunities available for food and beverage. I believe, and I'm seeing that sitting in Delhi, how the cyber hubs and the Sector 29s and the malls, 50% capacity are coming back. I think safe dining out in a safe environment, at least for the next
Okay, look
year.
at what happened to Cyber Hub in Gurgaon. The
No,
moment,
the corporates are down. There is hardly any lunch business, definitely.
That's right.
But
That's
what
right.
I hear from them is that as per their analysis, they will see a bit opening from January onwards. A bit.
Yeah.
It's not dramatic openings and things like that.
Right.
But
Right.
if you visit these places on a weekend, you know that they are back in full capacities in that
The
fashion.
non-corporate crowd has come back,
Of
The
course.
corporate crowd anyway is working from home. So
I think
how
to
long
some
do you
extent-
want to sit at home, and how long do you will have to step out? That's why I said in the beginning that we all need to realize that you need to start coexisting. You will have to take those precautions. So say no to panic, and things have started becoming. But I think what the customer, this has been my learning. Every time we opened a hotel, every time we opened a restaurant, every time people spoke about it on the social media. I'll give you, okay, again, sorry, but I'll have to again take the example of Bukhara, where people say, oh, it's one of those. But Saresh, first day, first show was sold out without even putting one simple ad. It just to our database saying we'll be opening tomorrow. That's it. And people started spreading the word around that they are safe. And if I go to a pub or a restaurant now in Gurgaon, if you look at the safety aspect, if you feel confident, you may want to go back again. But if you feel unsafe, then you may not want to go back at all. That is
That's right.
So you have to
That's
keep
right.
reinventing. What do you do? This is a very the future is completely unwritten right now, to my mind, and but it also give you a lot of opportunities which you need to kind of grab. And you will have to go back to some very imaginative thinking. And all of us are talking of alternate sources of revenue, or even in the same source. How do you sell? I've realized one thing, that relationships today have become even more deeper and much more meaningful. Today, when you go and beg for business, they say like, please help me on this one. For people whom you have helped in the past are totally coming forward in any which way that they can.
That's right. So, Mr. Kachru, you were you trying to say something? Mr. Kachru?
No, I was just trying to put my mind on what should or what is the thinking for the survival phase of our industry.
And here, I think let's loop in the government. You're dealing with the government agencies. So, what has been your reading about what the government has been up to?
To be honest, as I said earlier, our government has addressed some of the issues which are, as Sonega put it very right, 90 to 95% of our industry has not benefited from what they have done. We asked for some, I'm putting my other hat on as HAI. I feel this was for the first time. I must compliment the entire industry, whether it was HAI, FHRIA, CII, FICCI. They all actually collaborated together and had a definite ask. It was not like everybody was running in a different direction, but unfortunately, only few trivial issues were sorted out in the general stimulus. We haven't got anything. While we were asking for some basics, we were asking for things which really don't cost the government. We said, you know, if we are not operating a bar, we shouldn't be paying for the excise fee. If we have properties on lease, a hotel is not operating, why are you asking us for lease money? We asked for collateral free and interest free working capital for hotels. Now, these were some of the basic things we asked for. And one big thing we are still fighting for nationwide is the industry status. In terms of industry status, about 6 or 7 governments have already decided and issued instructions that hospitality be treated as an industry. But the benefits of industry have not been passed on. Maharashtra and partly Jammu and Kashmir are the only 2 states who have issued instructions. Like in Maharashtra now, you get all the industry benefits, whether it is the rate for utilities, power supply, license fees, licenses, you have been extended. Now, if we as an industry focus on a major issue, a lot of problems would be sorted out. But having said so, government is moving very slow. We have been ignored. Despite that, we provide jobs, so many job losses. I mean, our friend Dilip said, you know, most of my colleagues are not even admitting that there are so many job losses. But I can tell you, we are looking at 5 to 7 million job losses. It's not less. So, and it will create havoc in the industry if we don't get skilled people. So we have to look at it. I am urging that all of us should work in a combined manner and ask for a definite thing rather than giving a list of 40, 50 items, which government will never do it. I can assure you, if 1 point program we have asked for, give us the industry benefits, it will solve a lot of problem for operating hotels and new hotels. Look at parking norms. I mean, some of my colleagues have been fighting. Now you need in so many states 4 car parks to a room. I mean, does it make sense? It doesn't. So I think let us focus. Some state governments, I must say, have started moving on it. UP has declared it as an industry, but benefits have to be passed. Odisha has done it. West Bengal has done it. The only state is Maharashtra, with full gratitude to them. They have implemented, orders have been issued. And
I think Maharashtra has been quite an exemplary state that way. Maharashtra has been an exemplary state. It has,
Yeah, they have set the trend. They have set the trend. And I think if all of us work together and get this benefit for the industry, our survival package would be better rather than getting stimulus, which you will not get.
So, Sonika, if you were to make a demand to the government, what would it be from your perspective?
All right. So one is, of course, which I mentioned earlier on. So we were talking about interest-free loans, and I think the threshold needs to move up from 50 crores. I mean, we know for the balance 90% to really survive, we need to do that. And of course, it will need a certain amount of banking regulatory changes so that the banks can actually support us, but that they can do in probably the quickest manner. And apart from the interest and the repayments, so when Mr. Kachru said in terms of industry status, the biggest benefit that I get over and above industry status is that if I go into an infra status, which is infrastructure, which means that my door-to-door loan tenor is enhanced to probably ups of 20 years, which means that apart from the recurring interest outgo, even my repayment is rescheduled to be able to survive this difficult, probably another 24 months. So I think I would say more than industry, infrastructure status is extremely important for our industry. And then there are, of course, operating costs in which we could get a benefit. The moment the MSME limit is enhanced to beyond 50 CR, then we also get electricity benefit in terms of exemption. And currently, if you look at your operating cost, apart from payroll, HLP actually completely erodes my profitability. And and I'm in the business of providing experience to customers. I can't be switching off lights, for heaven's sake. So I think we need exemptions to pass through. The only thing is they need to appreciate what is a capital outlay and get it in line with the capital outlay of our industry. So these are two main things: the infrastructure status, the MSME, the applicability needs to get changed. And if we actually don't do that, as I said, the mortality is going to be high. As Mr. Puri also said, nobody wants to work for the hotels because either the people are being removed from the job, or they're being sent on a furlong. For them, for their families to survive is becoming a big challenge. And being trained in hotels, they are looking at other sectors, be it IT, be it consultancy, be it XYZ. And any case, we were, in dearth of good qualified, manpower. And if we're going to see a further outflux, we are having major ramifications from a lot of variables coming through. Be it finance, be it operating costs, be it in terms of the manpower, appropriate manpower coming to our industry. So this is the way I look at it. And I think this wouldn't cause too much of money to the exchequer, but it would definitely help us survive. And notwithstanding, the GST in itself is also quite a pain.
That because
we've been repetitive across various forums. I mean, at this point of time,
it seems so commonsensical, yet no one seems to listen to it.
No,
so I mean, we need a better.
Yes, Mr. Puri.
Yeah, can I just make a
Sure.
comment before I forget? Sorry, KB, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to submit. Sonika made a very relevant point on infrastructure, but I just want to remind everybody, if the status is changed to infrastructure, it needs an amendment in the constitution, which is not going to happen in the near future. So what we should push for, and I would submit it to everybody, give us the benefits. You can work with within the language of whatever you want, the government. But getting infrastructure, we have been trying, the industry has been trying for the last 15 years. And every time we are told that it needs changes and amendment in the constitution. I don't know why, but that's what we have been told by legal experts.
Dilip, you were saying something is...
I just want to make 3 quick comments on what I've heard some of our panelists speak about. When KB talked about Maharashtra and how well they've done this and changed the status, it exemplifies the key problem with our country. If you have a powerful politician in a tourism minister's role, you can make these changes, which is why Maharashtra was able to do it, because the chief minister's son is the tourism minister. If you had as powerful a politician in the central government's role as the tourism minister, a lot of these things would happen. So that's one comment I wanted to make. On the MICE sector, when Anil said, MICE has gone on a long holiday means, let's say, for the next 12 months. But at some point, when vaccines are all available and things are back to normal, I think the industry is sometimes missing the wood for the trees. Now, here's what you can do. What has COVID taught us? That these kind of setups where we are in conferences virtually on Zoom and all these platforms, tomorrow, when things are back to normal and your banquet hall can take 1,000 people, and you're doing a big dealers conference, you're doing a big launch of a product or something like that, today, you should be prepared to put in the technology in those banquet halls where you'll go to those organizers and those sponsors, the guys who do these big medical congresses and all that, and say, you know what? not only can you get 1,000 people as delegates physically in my hotel, I will give you the technology to reach out to 10,000 more people around the world to be able to view in and listen to what do people go to these for. You may not be able to network, but the opportunity to be a part of these things is something which hotels need to realize today. Invest in the technology now in your banquet hall. I recently saw a fashion show. It was I think the Paris Fashion Week or the New York Fashion Week, where I had a ringside view, though I was watching it virtually. Short of touching, feeling the fabric of what the model was wearing, I really felt that I could see everything. When you go for a live fashion show, there are just about 50 people who are there on the front row, right? Now, hotels need to think of what they can do with MICE in the future when things recover. So when you think of blended MICE and you think I can get back 1,000 people conference in my hotel, you've got to say to the sponsor, you're charging $1,000 per delegate to come into the hotel. Try $100 to a delegate to virtually see it from anywhere in the world, and look at the number of eyeballs you've been able to get and look at the incremental revenue you've been able to get. So I think hotels need to see that perspective when MICE recovers as well. The last point I want to make is that Sonika mentioned about people and looking at other industries to work in. I think the reality is for too long, and I always tell my hotel colleagues to pardon me for saying these things now, but an outside in perspective allows me to just see things differently to when I was in the industry. We have always been a very insular industry. If we are in the hotel business, we think that's all we are good at. We never go outside our industry. As a result of that, we don't encourage people from outside the hospitality industry to come and work in the hospitality industry. And therefore, people find themselves in this challenge today. That those transferable skills they have, why can't they migrate? An FMCG executive goes and works in a bank, who goes and works in a consultancy, who goes and works in hospitality. But as hoteliers, we are born to this industry. We stay in this industry. We retire from this industry. I'm saying if we began to bring in talent from outside our industry into our industry, to encourage talent from our industry to go and work and see what's there outside of hotels, I think our industry could be more mainstream. We'd have fewer challenges of talent than we have today.
Fantastic. I think talking about MICE, I think in one of our webinars that we did some months ago, Sabas Joseph of Viscraft had talked about phygital being the future, and Dilip, exactly what you're saying is phygital. That you have a physical event, but its footprint is much bigger because of the digital transmission.
Indeed.
Mr. Kaul, do you any parting thoughts? You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Kaul.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm glad Dilip spoke out about this human capital issue, because this has been, I think it's been glossed over and sugar coated. So, and it's time that this came out into the open and this was seriously discussed and addressed. So I'm glad we made a start. We did something about this today. Talking about government, I have only one request. I know a lot of good work is going on, and KB and his colleagues are doing a great job with that. I think the most important thing for us right now is to have travel bubbles. The important thing is that the airplanes are up in the sky and they are full. Because until the airplane seats are not full, the hotel beds have no chance. So we have to really understand that that's the precursor for us as an industry.
You want the government of India to have more air bubbles?
Yeah, correct. I think that basically, there's a lot of talk that's going on. There's a lot of effort that is going on. And then again, there are starts and stops. So if we can just make sure that the air capacity gets ramped up, and if air travel picks up, that would be the single biggest fillip to our industry more than anything else. Because, the only way that our city hotels and our international travel will start coming back to this country is once air travel is up and about in the skies. So that was that. And I think that, I personally think that maybe break-even point is maybe 3 to 6 months away. So it's not so bad. We are not, once we reach a situation where hotels are back in are no longer writing their books and wedding, the mood will change.
Right.
We are a very sentimental lot.
Right.
Things are too good or they are too bad, which is never really the case. But that's how we choose to see it. But
Right.
I think that clearly there should be some soul searching. I think as hoteliers, we tend to sugarcoat too many things too often. There should really be. We have some structural issues in the industry. Some of them have been addressed. The real problem that we have is that we don't have variable costs. Majority of the costs were fixed costs. So now for the first time we have addressed this and we have come out with some kind of semi-variable costs. So I think, and that's why the hotels have a very high operating leverage. So I think some of these structural issues have to be addressed. We have had COVID as an opportunity to, that up till now we used to hide because there were only 2 or 3 bad months in a year which you could gloss over, and then you had the highs that would take care of the lows. But this is the first time that you had a low period which has gone on, for 9 months, and it threatens to go on for at least another 6. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to truly address what makes the structural ills of the industry.
Fantastic.
Sorry, Shai, I
Yeah.
had a bit of a point to make, if
Yeah.
you allow me.
Absolutely.
One is, of course, we're looking out to the government. There are issues, which particularly hotels face. But I think we as an industry also need to come along together. Now, what's happening is, in terms of this desperate need to attract domestic business, hotels are undercutting each other. And they're going really thin in terms of their ADRs. I mean, one is their gross ADRs, the net ADRs are really low because of the inclusions, this, that. I
Right.
think in pockets, the hotels, the general managers need to come together of being able to have a certain amount of sanity in terms of the rates they're offering in the market. So we as industry also need to come together. I mean, at the end of the day, I see a lot of Delhi hotels in 3,500, they're providing all 3 meals, laundry, pickup from their homes. And what do you get at the end of the day, apart from certain amount of cash flows which are coming into the hotel? Nothing. So I think in certain geographic areas, within a certain radius of the general managers come together and make sure that, they're talking about certain healthy, cognizant numbers. I think that'll be also a good strategy to look at.
Yeah, because
I
I
wanted
think
to make a point. Yeah.
there's no point reacting in panic, and which is exactly what's happening right now. Anil, as we draw to the end of the discussion, last word belongs to
Just
you.
2 points.
Anil.
Just 2 points. One is on the, there was a lot of discussion on the government, what we should go to. To my mind, we should also start looking at a revival strategy, from the government. The brand called India, Incredible India, how does it become Incredibly Safe India? Because whether it is 6 months away or 1 year away or 2 years away, when things start coming back to normal and the leisure travel definitely starts all over again, that's the time when you need to go, all out on this one, and the work must begin. What some states have been able to do in India, whether it's Kerala or Rajasthan or MP, a brand called India certainly needs to be, we have a lot of wealth. And I keep telling my, my own colleagues in my company that your home ground today is your new playground. And this is the best opportunity to retain a leisure traveler who travel to nearby destinations, whether it was Middle East, Far East, etc. And best opportunity now to retain the weddings, because India has lost a lot of good weddings, over the last few years. And we can do so much with our warmth and hospitality. So this is the time to, bring it back. The government could also look at some large format events. Case in point is an IPL, for example, which happened in UAE. That's a huge loss. If matches had to be played in a stadium which is totally empty, anybody can do that, provided you are kind of close by. So keep a sharper focus. That's how the market is. Road ahead is definitely rough and tough, and the winner will have to be really fast and sharp. That's my message.
I think good, fast and sharp. That is those are the buzzwords for the months ahead. I hope it won't be 18 months. It will be less than 18 months that we're looking at. Maybe Mr. Kaul has already sounded the bells of hope by talking about the 3 to 6 months being the limit he sees for hotels coming back to the break-even point. I think that's a great beginning that will be a great beginning for the industry. Because at the moment, I see a sort of a sense of doom, the lingering sense of doom in the industry because of this pandemic returning in such a vicious way across Europe and America. Thank you all for your discussion will be aired live on 2nd October. No, sorry, 2nd December. And it will be aired both on Zoom and on Facebook Live, as well as it will be preserved, as we say, for posterity on YouTube. So it will be available for reference anytime in the future on YouTube. 2nd December is the time. If of course, we'll all let you know the exact time when it will be webcast. And we'll all be sharing with you the Zoom links once we finalize the webcast timings. So please distribute it among all your colleagues and anyone, your associates, anyone whom you feel should benefit from this discussion. Of course, on our part, we'll be promoting this discussion in a big way across the social media channels. So thank you once again. Mr. Rakesh Kumar, some parting words from you.
Yeah, in fact, I think by now the recording is over.
The recording, my part was over.
Yeah, your part is over anyway. But I just like to add on that Mr. Kachu's point about the industry. I think this is really a need for all of us. Particularly all the hospitality players have to come on a platform and then discuss about the industry status. But I would like to add here that recently MSME has drastically changed its definition. In September, they brought a notification as a relief measure to the entire industry, just not limiting to the earlier definition. So now they have broadened the entire definition of MSME. And this definition is not about the land and building. This definition is covering irrespective of the industry that has been highlighted earlier in the OM. Now it's open for all. Even the MICE can also be covered under that. So the basic criteria of the entitlement is the medium enterprise where the investment in plant and machinery or equipment does not exceed 50 crores and the turnover does not exceed 250 crore rupees. So I'm talking about turnover is 250 crore rupees. Plant and machinery, it does not include the land and building. So that means many of the enterprise will be covered under the medium enterprise as an industry. I think for hospitality sector, you can take it forward. Mr. Gadkari is reasonably accepting the suggestion from the industry. We can also have a meeting with Mr. Gadkari. So up to 250 crore, the organizations they can be covered as an industry in the MSME. They have to register themselves as a Udyog Aadhaar. They have to take from the department. So this is just to update the information.
No, thank you for clarification. We would seek help from you and people who can help us. We are working on a few such things, and I think whatever we can do, we should do it together.
And as far as your states are concerned, another active state other than the Maharashtra and J&K is the Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh is giving straight away 30% subsidy on construction. that is up to the disbursement of 30 crore for setting up of any hotel. If you go there, they have a very clear GO, government order, where 30% they are giving for any hospitality unit you have to set up. Plus, there are other areas on electricity, then there's area for registration, and other relaxations are there. So I think that is also Himachal Pradesh. Recently, I studied, one of my friend has set up a hotel there, and the procedure is very, very simple. You need not get registered yourself with the tourism department, but you have to get registered with the industry department. So straight away, just register with the industry department and take the subsidy as an industry over there. So just, I think we have to compile the information of all the state, and then we have to prepare a white paper and submit it to the government.
I think we'll take this offline and get some words of wisdom from you, and through HAI or any relevant body. And we have state chapters also. We'll ask them to follow up. It's very nice of you to share this information with us.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think there's so many, so many differences. And Mr. Kumar, thank you for bringing out such interesting facts and new developments. Actually, there's so many notifications that keep coming out every day that one gets confused. What is the current situation?
Yeah, there are multiple. That's why I said in bits and pieces, every state is doing something. Some are consolidating, but whatever you can help us, we can look at, how we can work together to take it forward.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.